allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please remember to silence your phones and pagers and such. First item on the agenda, citizen concerns. Do we have any citizen concerns? And please be reminded that we try and keep them to 3 minutes per individual.
I guess we start here then.
Come on up to the microphone.
I'll also remind the folks that if this takes too long, we do have a set time for a property sale at 4:35, so we'll come back to your concerns once we get past that. So feel free to come on up for the moment.
Just about the dust that's been causing trouble. We live on Buchanan Avenue.
What's your name, please?
Lynn Tagg, my wife Karen.
Buchanan Avenue and
then he's
180th?
180th Street, 180th Street.
Okay.
Just that the trucks and stuff, they haven't really started yet this year from Peterson's Farms. And the dust is just crazy, terrible. And I got a little video I'd like to see, have you watch. That would help. Excuse me. This is last December, I think it was. They were hauling round bales for 4 weeks.
Okay.
The first truck would come by at 7:30 every day, and they keep it up till like 6 o'clock at night. Just wait a minute, there's another one. Did they meet each other in the road? There's another one coming the other way.
Just a question, do you have any problem submitting that electronically to the Board of Supervisors so we can include that?
I don't, but someone else.
You, Donna?
That's beyond me. Okay, did you see the other one come back the other way?
I did not, but
Well, I mean, you see the dust drifting off to the side there, so anyway. And
We've lived out there for 30 years, and it's constantly, continuously gotten worse.
getting worse.
We can't be outside in the summertime. Our children can't be outside. We couldn't hang out a set of sheets to dry if we wanted to. We have relatives and friends come over. They can't handle it. And we can't handle it either. It used to be we could just shut our front windows to get away from the dust. 5-10 years ago, we've been out there 30. And now, and so then we just open up the back end of the house. Now we can't open up anything.
They're running trucks,
If you don't get your mail in 5 minutes, you're sitting there beating the dust off your letters and your, it's bad.
And then
and we're all here to tell you about it.
the lady across the street, she moved out 2 years ago. She couldn't take it anymore. So I don't think that's a good quality of life. So, okay, thanks. And there's other people that like to talk. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm Gary Gross, and I lived on 180th Street for 25 years, and I've lived on Buchanan Avenue for the last 45 years. I'm a school bus driver for Sergeant Bluff Luton School, and I drive these two roads every day, twice a day. I got a 48-foot school bus, and you can't see the kids in the back of the seat because of the dust that comes inside of the school bus as you're driving down the road. I think part of the problem is the increased traffic that's been put on that road over the last 7, 8, 10 years. Semi-truck drivers going up and down that road, hauling manure, hauling silage, hauling round bales, has added to the problem there. I think the other problems that we've got is the roads today are much wider out there. We've got a road grader guy that's taken the crown off the road, pushed the crown clear out in the ditch. So now we got about a 6 or 8 foot wider road, which is good because of all of the traffic that you got from the semi-trucks and from all of the combines and the tractors and the corn planters and stuff. You know, when I grew up out there, we farmed with A. John Deeres. You don't farm with an A. John Deere anymore. And I don't know if any of you have had to meet one of those 36-row corn planters going down the road, but there's hardly enough room unless they pull into a driveway to even pass them. So the next thing that happens is the road grader comes by later and he tries to get some of the gravel that's been in the ditch, and he brings the gravel and the dirt and everything back in the middle of the road. What happens when the mud dries out? It turns to dust. If any of you have driven a school bus or anything that's got pop-off air brakes, I can sit there and the pop-off air brakes go off and there's a dust cloud there that the kids follow right off the bus. And it's because we don't have the right kind of gravel being put on those roads. 5, 6 years ago, you guys come out there and you put some gravel on the roads. Today, all you're doing is come out there putting clay dirt on the roads. If you took a shaker deal out here and tried to sift through the gravel that they're putting on there today, I bet you wouldn't get a 50-gallon drum of rocks out of that whole dump truck load of gravel that you're putting on the road. Today, they're out there, they run up and down the road, if they can go 400 feet with one dump truck load, I'd be surprised. My yard is 440-foot road frontage. They can't go the full 440 feet before they're out of sand. Well, when you got all these people living on a mile or two of that gravel road down there, a little dump truck load on the top of the hill doesn't do very good. And so I think we need to have something anyway. And I think better gravel on the road would be a good start, because you know as well as I do, if you have gravel and not dirt to start with dust, the dust problem goes away. So that's my idea anyway.
Okay.
All right, we're up against a hard time for a property sale.
It's a set time. It's not going to be a hard time necessarily.
Public hearing and sale of property parcel ending in 2014, also known as 2011 Hoy Street. Public hearing is open on pros and cons for this property sale.
Hearing none, I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Motion by second by Taylor to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. We are now open for any bidders interested in this property, also known as 2411 Boyce Street. Do we have anyone that's interested in the property? Please come up and give us your name and address and your minimum bid, please.
My name is Matthew LaFrenz. I live at 2415 Boyce, and my bid will be $218.
$218 is your minimum bid?
Yes.
Do we have any other interested parties?
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I move that the property be sold to Mr. LaFrenz.
Yes.
I will second the motion by Mr. Taylor to sell the property for $218. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Thanks very much. And all right. Thanks for your patience. Returning to the citizen concerns. Does anybody else wish to speak on the matter of their dust problem?
Hi, my name is Debbie DeForest. We live at 1861 Buchanan Avenue. We've lived out there for roughly 24 years. I don't believe that our problem originates from farming. We've lived out there long enough, all of us knows. In the spring and the fall, you have certain activities that belong to farming. Our problem stems from the expansion of Peterson's feedlot. This is a feedlot issue. Their trucks are running up and down in front of our road causing the dust are from the feedlot. They've been allowed to expand, and our problems are only going to get worse. You guys have denied us dust control in the past. I can't really see that you're probably going to grant and the county's going to pay for dust control. So, which brings me to my next question. Is there anything that you can do to stem the flow of these trucks if we can't get the dust control on our road? And can we stop the expansion of this feedlot? We never had this problem before he expanded down past the old county home. When he was just pretty much isolated over the hill on 180th, we didn't have these problems. Over the last few years, like I said, since he's expanded, and he's just purchased more land that abuts my property, So yeah, we're a little concerned, and we'd like to be notified if he has any further plans to expand his feedlot.
Mr. Chair, I wonder if we might be able to hear from the county engineer as far as we've heard quality and nature of the gravel, dust control, the feedlot issue. Is that? I was wondering if we could hear any response from our county engineer as far as the different.
I forgot the petition we all signed.
My name's Larry Harshfield. I live on the corner of 180th and Buchanan. And we sent a letter to...
Sir, can we just hold up just a second? Go ahead. And
I move to receive it.
I will second it. The motion by Mr. Radig to accept the petition. We need a vote on that?
yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. We have signatures accepted. Mr. Harshfield.
Anyway, in 2013, we sent a letter to supervisors. I don't know if any of you were on the board then or not, but apparently they just gave it to the engineer. And after 4 months, we had no reply, so we called Munson. He got a reply, and we got a letter back after 4 months. And he said that, well, I thought it was kind of rude. He said the county's not looking to expand their dust control. That wasn't the issue. You know, it was the issue is we had a problem. And he said that we didn't meet the threshold, minimum threshold of traffic. And there's like, I think around 9 miles of dust control in the county now, just from what I found. And half of that doesn't meet the county policy on dust control from the way I read it. The DOT traffic counts on the internet, anybody can get it. And he also told us that they would take special attention to our area when they did it in 2015. And Ron Bunning is the guy at Ames. He sent out a letter to all the counties, and he said Woodbury County never replied back. I got some more, but I'll cut it short. You know, you don't have to have a traffic count to look at the roads and see the condition they're in. For example, on 120th Street, there's a mile stretch of there are 2 houses, and they do dust control the solid mile. Well, there's no houses. I mean, we're sitting with dust. The county's doing dust control. There's no houses. It don't make sense. And also, the county foreman said that due to the amount of traffic we have on our road, he's got orders to grade it twice a week. And every time they grade it, it causes more dust. All the trucks are grinding that stuff up, and it's more dust. The more you put on it, I guess that's basically what I'd like to say.
Okay. I'm going to ask our county engineer to step up and...
Can I just add that I clocked a truck last year. Every 3 minutes there was a truck that went this way and this way past my house. Every 3 minutes. Can you imagine the kind of dust that they, every 3 minutes, you want a semi going past your house?
Okay.
Mark Narrow, Woodbury County Engineer. Don't know which question to answer first. I'll talk about our dust control policy is that we apply dust control to roads with a traffic count that's greater than 200 vehicles per day is what our current threshold is. That's by DOT traffic count. Contrary to, I don't know why Mr. Bunting didn't get the letter, but every year ahead of our traffic control counts that are taken every 4 years by DOT, we mark up a map and send it to DOT where we want those special counts. And we did do that in 2014 in advance of our 2015 count. We've not received that request yet for the 2019 counts, but we anticipate that will be coming to our office usually in September, October of 2018.
How often is that?
For every 4 years. Okay. We have put our traffic counters out there at different times. We had a speed complaint from a resident that was east of where these houses are in the corner of Buchanan and 180th. The count we had that day, or in that period, was in the 150 to 175 range, average daily traffic. I can't define that as average daily traffic. That's what the actual raw count was when it was taken. The dust control policy is one that is up for review. The board would have the ability to change that. We would have to then fund additional dust control to be placed out there. We do have a program for people who don't qualify for the dust control program. It can be put down at their expense. I know that's, most people would prefer that the county paid for it. The roads we treat are the roads that have historically made the amount of traffic. That would include Glen Ellen, just south of 141 till we get past the last house. It includes Glen Ellen from Lakeport Road to the bridge over Whiskey Creek. It includes 140th Street, Buchanan Avenue, 120th Street, and Barker. Some of those areas where there's only the two houses that were mentioned, you still have a lot of traffic that's meeting head-to-head, so it justifies that additional count. I think the person who mentioned the growth of the feedlots there and the expansion of the operation to the farm there near the county home is dead spot on with what the issue is. We now have a large farm operation that is transiting these roads continuously as part of their operation. As to whether there's anything we can do about that, we don't have the ability to restrict land purchase or farm operations. They are exempt. When you read the DNR regulations on dust control, agricultural uses and agricultural traffic is specifically exempt.
Mark, can I ask something real quick? Have we,
Mr. A couple of other.
Mark, it doesn't seem like every 4 years is sufficient in all cases. At least in the last few years, I haven't seen this level of concern in this area. So is there a mechanism whereby the county can undertake that more frequently?
We can borrow counters from the DOT outside of their normal counting period, so we can get counters in September and October and request that they use that raw data and then apply their factors for it to come up with what their ADT would be. That would be a potential compromise to get something done sooner. Our traffic counters catch and get a raw count. The DOT isn't generally satisfied with those for their purposes and keeping them in the same type of count that they're used to working with their models.
Is that something we could explore in this case?
I can ask to borrow a couple of those late this year.
Mail it.
That would get them an answer in time for the 2019 season. The other option the board has is to change the policy, but that would almost double our dust control program if we lowered it, for instance, to 150 vehicles per day, which is a ceiling that I feel they're within at this point.
Okay. Mr. Reddick.
That's basically the same question. So.
Okay. Mr. Taylor.
Roughly, just so you know, it roughly costs us $5,000 a mile to apply material to the road.
So you said the dust control policy is up for review. What are the means and mechanisms of that and how soon?
It goes through the board's policy committee.
And is that scheduled? When you said
it
it's up for,
hasn't been yet. I've been working on the budget and program.
But that's something that could be taken up by the policy review committee?
Yes, it could be.
And then do you know if we went down to 150, have you ever crunched the numbers to see what that would cost?
It's roughly double what we're putting down now when you pick up all the roads that are over 150 vehicles per day.
And what is the budget
Currently
expense?
we spend about $45,000 a year.
So to go from 45,000 to 90,000?
To about 90,000. And this is a quality of life, not quality of road issue when you're mitigating dust. It really does little to improve the road, but it does make for a much more pleasant place to be and live. Again, they are victims of additional traffic out there as a farm operation has grown. That is beyond the control of this board or my office.
On our policy for traffic, does it differentiate type of traffic?
It does not.
I mean, a car going down that road and a semi going down the road are going to be a huge difference.
Two very different types of traffic, no question about it.
Yeah, but our policy just says number of vehicles.
Because we don't have classification counts.
We don't count wheels.
Problem. No, we don't count axles. The DOT counts are just raw vehicles going down the road. We make an estimate of what truck traffic is, but without a classification count being done, that takes a different type of counter and additional data than DOT typically collects on gravel roads. They're counting 90,000 miles of gravel statewide, so they don't spend a lot of time to get any more than just raw daily traffic counts.
I got one though first. Mark, do you have any comment on the gravel quality that was brought up a few minutes ago?
Well, I would disagree with it. Our last material that we've gotten out of both the railroad pit and the right pit that is opened up near Anthem have both been better quality than we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years. We monitor the output from our contractors who are crushing and processing that material for us daily. We take and run sieve samples. Occasionally, and this happens especially in the spring, we do put down some crushed concrete aggregate as opposed to gravel. The crushed concrete tends to do better in soaking up some of the moisture that's present at this time of the year. It helps us build a base, but it tends to be a finer aggregate than what the gravels are. Crushed concrete is also something we don't use in an area where we plan to use dust control unless we cap it with more gravel, because it is a dustier product. It's always grinding against each other and developing more dust. But it is a product we use more frequently in the spring to help build a base.
Mr. Taylor?
When is the next policy review committee? Do we know?
Can be set in the next month or two,
And
or earlier if need be.
I can throw the current policy together and then the budget implications of the roads over 150.
Yeah.
And even though the 2015 count doesn't show them as being that high, we could use our raw count just to for the board to work with. That would be an option too, is that you could add to that policy if you chose to. The risk you take is the additional cost that's accrued by the county.
You said that this area would be above 150 vehicles?
By our count. By DOT count, it's still under 150.
And that's because?
I expect the 2019 count will be above.
Okay.
I don't know when he bought that feedlot set by the county home. So.
do we feel, is it a necessity to go through the policy review committee on this, do you think?
Wouldn't necessarily.
I mean, I know it's policy, but
you 5 would have the ability to review the policy yourselves. Is there a bylaws requirement they do it?
No, that if it's something that is time sensitive, you can bring it directly to the board.
I'd just assume, I know I'm just one, but I'd assume if we have a recommendation that it be brought before, that way we don't delay any longer the means and mechanism by which potentially we could provide relief. I mean, if we wait
until mid-May is when dust control starts going down.
Okay.
We don't typically put it down before that because the roads aren't stable enough from winter thaw to have it do us any good until that point. No. Typically, we apply to these roads twice per year. Mid to late May, we try and get it down ahead of Memorial Day. And then we shoot for last week of July, first week of August. That gets us through that period to mid-October typically.
And I don't have an issue. I think I don't want to see it delayed a couple of months for a policy review committee, and then eventually, if there's something that could be done as far as a recommendation or a cost sooner rather than later, I think
well, if it comes directly to the board, then it's much quicker to do that review.
Yeah. So for the good of the public, the avenue Supervisor Taylor is talking about as chair of the policy review committee. Recommendations could be brought to that committee from the board or the public and have that discussion there. They would then recommend a change to this board. It's typically scheduled monthly or quarterly, typically when there's more background or homework needed on an issue. I don't see that as the case. There's some very simple metrics we have. We know it would be an extra $45,000 to lower the threshold to 150 vehicles a day. I could see myself supporting that at the committee level. Supervisor Raddick's the other one on that committee. And so I don't see the need to necessarily go through that extra process if it can be brought back to the board with that, because as a, in the grand scheme of your budget, Mark, I think it's worthwhile.
Mark, could you reiterate the process that you talked about, that they could also pay for that themselves, that part of the policy?
Yeah. That is part of our program. It's
just for the public's knowledge.
That areas that do not qualify under the county applied dust control are still able to contract for dust control in front of their individual homes. We probably have between 40 and 50 rural residences a year that spray in front of or along their own properties, that either they're not on a detour route that gets dust control or not on one of the scheduled dust control routes.
And what would be the average cost of something like that?
It runs roughly 90 cents a foot. So in a mile, you're looking between $4,500 and $4,800 a mile. Knock that. You shouldn't do less than 400 feet in front of an individual house. And the reason for that 400 feet is, as we're talking about with semis, you know how a truck will drag that dust within its eddy behind the truck. And if you do less than that, you really haven't done anything effectively. We've had people try to get by with 250 or 300 feet, and invariably it's not enough to make a difference. We typically center on their driveway and go 200 feet each way when we're paying for it, for either a detour or as part of the dust control program. We typically do not do the full mile. We will do where there are homes unless we're in that 200 to 300 range, where we do full length along there because the traffic count is so high. Another road we do full length would be the 220th Street that we just seal coated full length. That's 540 vehicles per day there. There are roads that are unpaved at this point in time, but because of once you get above that 200 vehicle a day, 300 vehicle a day threshold, you really have to look at how continuous that traffic is over the course of a day. If we have spots that are very close where it's 40 to 75 feet between them, even 100 feet between them, we'll do that whole shot then, because it gets very difficult for us to maintain in between.
I know you know the area, and I do too somewhat, but what would you say we have out here, roughly 5 miles of road?
No, it wouldn't be that much. If we just did in front of residences, we're probably looking in the neighborhood of a mile and a half total. Then the question would be, do we stop before we get to Peterson Farms and just do those residences that are on the other side, or do we continue all the way to the end of the road and go through their business? Our normal answer would be we do everything that's within the mile that's approved for the system.
Approved by what?
Well, are
you talking about if it's at cost to residents, or are you talking about if it's within the...
for it.
Okay.
We don't differentiate between an operation or a farm operation or something that's out there. The last house that I can think of is probably a quarter-mile west of where Peterson Farms has their continuous operation going down the hill toward Charles Avenue. You're the last house.
The white one right on the hill. The dust follows it when they're coming 50 miles an hour down that hill. I'm the closest road to the house to the road.
So if I hear we may not be going through the policy review committee, do you think April 17th, that Tuesday, 3 Tuesdays from now, is adequate time to bring forward a recommendation if it's ahead of May that this is a concern, and then we can give some surety to the folks who have petitioned the board today on this issue, either yay or nay?
17th would work for me. My
Okay.
5-year program is due April 10th, and it would be difficult to get that done between now and the 10th, but the 17th would be doable.
That sound like a fair plan to you folks?
To review it like on cars and stuff, because we've gotten the special one out there.
Ma'am, if you're gonna speak, can you come up here, please?
What do you guys mean by like what, for the 17th, like, are you guys gonna try to do like
Sorry,
a special?
I hate to interrupt, but please identify yourself.
Oh, I'm Ashley Johnson, live at 1727 180th Street. I don't understand like what you guys would all bring, because when I've been talking to the county and the DNR and everything for years now, because my kids can't play outside, I can't put their pool up anymore. We've had the special counters out there, and when we do, Peterson sends his employees and his trucks in opposite directions so they don't go over the counter. So I'm just wondering what we could possibly, like what you're talking about.
Sure. So what can you expect in the next 3 weeks? I think you can expect that the county engineer would come forward with a recommendation as far as what the cost would be incurred to the county, and that this board could take action to say, go to a count of 150 rather than the current count, and lower that down potentially, and thereby make that dust control applicable to the areas that are affected. So that's what we would be asking for as far as review and incurred costs to take action on. And then it would be up to the majority of this board to approve that, but that would give us and you all some time to hear in a time certain, so you don't feel like it's being dragged out and you don't know, well, where is the county in this? What's the answer? And that you have some...
We have to pull to salvage our summer.
Right.
That'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
Can I say one more thing?
My name is Kevin Burns. I live at 1642 180th Street. I have a huge bay window that looks to the south towards Peterson's farm. When I see the semis coming, you can't see anybody's houses. I mean, the valley is just wall to wall. But something has changed. I have my road in front of my house ignited every year, and I pay about $600 to $800 yearly just to keep the dust down in front of my place, because my wife has COPD. She can't be outside and breathe the dust. But something has changed in the last 6 years of what we're putting on that road. Something drastically has changed, because we have more dirt and more dust than we did. And I've lived there for 41 years, and the problem didn't exist 10, 15 years ago on the road. I don't know if it's the size, the diameter of the rock, or whatever, or no rock. But the county has been coming through just recently and putting gravel, which they've done an excellent job onto it. But what I've seen in the gravel are rocks that I pulled off this big. And I've got 8 of them that were dumped in front of my house, over 6 inches in diameter. Now that shouldn't be in the load. That would do damage to somebody's car onto it. You know, and I don't, the maintainer, I think he does a good job. Some of the other ones do not think he does a good job. I mean, they're out there twice a week maintaining the road. But something has to be done with the dust control. The kids can't play outside. We can't have a barbecue outside. We just can't be out there. But another thing is, when the semis hit 50, 55 miles an hour on that gravel road, it's a total whiteout. It's a dust cloud. And not so much vehicles. Vehicles do it, but the semis are the killer. And then in the last 6 years, I realized that Peterson's farm lot has grown, and they've had more, and they move more material out. They bring out manure, they bring in bales of hay, that they do it in the fall time. But something needs to be done somewhere along the line. And I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you.
I've lived out there 45 years, and all these people have been out there 40 years. Between Highway 20 and Old 141, there's been no road improvement for 50 years. They paved Buchanan, they paved Stone Avenue, Charles Avenue, they redid Local 20, Christie Road, Warrior Road, 220th Street. That area, they don't do nothing. And that's the reason to do the others, because they're around the city limits, you know, and all the traffic.
It's who you know, not what you know. And who lives where.
You know, you all do a good job. Yeah.
We're just fed up. We can't breathe. We can't breathe.
have no quality
We don't want to
of
be
life
outside.
thanks to the
And what's that
expansion of
going to
that
be
feed
for
lot.
our
Okay,
health
okay. If
problems?
we're trying to make it so everybody comes up and gets identified.
Thank you, Rocky.
I've been out there.
Ma'am, first identify yourself.
Jean Frank,
Thank you.
180th. My parents own the ground that I built on now, and last year I almost lost me and my kids, my grandkids, because they had a semi coming this way, they had a semi going opposite. And that semi couldn't see me, so I started my gas because I was at my mailbox, and I gave it all the gas I could to get up the hill. That semi slowed down, and I turned around, and Peterson's came back. It's scary out there. They couldn't see me in a green car. One went one way, one went the other, and it was just nothing but dust, just engulfed us.
I'm picking up a theme of dust out here. I'm picking up a theme of excessive dust.
And truck traffic. Excessive truck traffic
Okay.
from a feedlot. They're not farming, it's a feedlot.
I'm Jason Hager. I live at 1658 180th. I have a U-pick apple orchard out there, and the dust is affecting several rows of production on my trees. So some of my trees have died, and then also when we're open in the fall, we get customer complaints from the dust and the trucks driving by. And then also when they haul the manure out to the fields, it covers the road, and then that also goes airborne and gets on the food, which is a USDA problem for me. But there's a lot of issues with it.
Okay. Is there anybody else that has?
We haven't brought up the issue of the smell, the flies, but we'll just stick to the dust.
Well, I'm not sure that there's anything we can do on a county level for flies and smell.
Oh, come on, you can spray too, can't
I just want to, I'm Pat Gill, I'm the county auditor, and I was just trying to keep order, and I want to make sure that everybody has signed in so that I can have an accurate record. And then I think that my deputy asked for the electronic file. Somebody's going to get that to my deputy, is that correct? Okay. Thank you.
Well, okay, do we have anybody that's in favor of the agriculture business going on?
We live in Iowa, we're farmers.
Great. My point is, may I?
We don't have any problems with Peterson Farm. We've got to have beef onto it. But something needs to be done with semis traveling 60 miles an hour down a 50-mile gravel road.
I understand, but at the same time, we're trying to, in the spirit of moving the meeting along, is there anybody that has any comments opposite what you guys are here for? Then I'm hearing that we... in favor of the dust? Not very. So we have a plan moving forward, Mr. Taylor. What was would you remind me?
By April 17th, to direct the county engineer to come back to the Board of Supervisors with a plan and a budget for dust control that would potentially lower that traffic count down to 150. And that would require action on the Board of Supervisors part so that you know either way, yea or nay, what's going to go forward in order to address your concerns. And I'm very appreciative that you come today because we do listen and care about your concerns.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
So when the deputies go down to unload a few rounds there, they can just maybe stop up the street and maybe get a couple tickets handed out too.
Mr. Young.
Yes, and I...
Please.
Also, Mr. Chair, the other aspect I do think that lowering the traffic count threshold to 150 a day is a reasonable reaction to the reality of increased truck and semi traffic, because that's something that has not been as much of an issue in the past.
I want to talk to you about traffic counts. They put 2 years ago, they put up the new electronic traffic counts just down south of my house. Peterson tells his employees and the semis, they go out Charles Avenue. They don't come down 180th Street until they remove the cameras, and that's exactly what they did last time.
And Brian's a friend of mine, I get along with him real good. But, you know, there's a way around the traffic count cameras, so you don't get an accurate count of what's going on the road.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. So what's the adverse impact of why wouldn't one want to have, supposing that that's true, and I'm not saying it is neither here nor there, but why wouldn't somebody welcome that?
Because I'm Ashley again. When I talked to DNR threatened to fine him for his trucks, all of his trucks, because they said during him hauling silage and manure and stuff like that, that he was supposed to put dust control down in front of our house if the county wasn't going to do it because it was no quality of life. So that's why he started having them move when the county started putting down the counters, and I got that special count. I don't know how I did it.
And DNR caught him taking the manure out of his lagoon and spraying it on the road last year. And it was thanks to one of the sheriff's wives
fined for that
she got her car sprayed with it, that we got confirmation on DNR for them putting it down on the road.
But that's why he started making them go a different direction, is because DNR did contact him and say that he needed to do that when he was hauling.
You know, 180th Street is, they classify the farm to market road. I don't know how you get around that or anything, but, and I'm not against him doing or having his cattle or hauling his cattle, but if we can keep the dust down, everybody'd be happy. And then let the kids outside to play. You just can't go out and play.
You live in the country, open your windows.
Thank you very much.
And that is true. Fugitive dust is finable about $10,000 per occurrence.
Thank you.
So, the board is directing Mr. Nera to get back to us on April 17th. Acceptable, Mr. Nera? Thank you very much. Do we have any other citizen concerns? Hearing none. Approval of the agenda.
Move approval, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Ung to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Items 3 through 8 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 3 is approval of the minutes of the March 20, 2018 meeting. Item 4 is approval of claims. Number 5 is county auditor approval for liquor license for the Anthem Golf Course. Item 6, community economic development approval of IEDA contract amendment. Item 7 is human resources approval of memorandum of personnel transaction. And item 8 is county attorney approval to participate with the City of Sioux City in the submission of the Edward J. Byrne Memorial Justice Grant Residential Substance Abuse Treatment Program application to the Governor's Office of Drug Control Policy. Any questions on any individual item in the consent agenda?
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Potabom, second by Ung to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
4-0.
4-0, I'm sorry. Where'd he go? Anyway.
You went to check the dust.
Thank you.
Item 10.
Thank you.
Secondary roads. 10A, consider approval for contract for project number MW73 73-97.
This is a project for replacement of a box culvert on County Road D54. The board awarded the contract work, and the contractor has...
Folks, please, we're still trying to have a meeting here.
I recommend approval of the contract for $97,455.90. That's with Nelson and Rock Contracting of Ottawa, Iowa.
So moved.
I will second the motion by Mr. Taylor. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Did you vote? Passes 5-0. Item 10B, receive and consider bids for annual corrugated metal pipe purchase for 2018, project CP 2018.
Is there anybody else that wants a bid tab? We sent out a solicitation for our annual culvert purchase bids, and we received 2 responses. The first one is from Contech Engineered Solutions. This includes what we stock each year for work on driveways and under roads for small culverts. It also includes a number of special project culverts that are work that will be done by our own staff for some of the larger culvert replacements and small bridge replacements. I'll read off the total price. Contech's total price bid is $86,137.43. 86,137.43. Our second bid is from Metal Culverts Incorporated. Total bid price, $82,766.48. 82,766.48. I believe I've looked at the unit prices. Each of the unit prices, Metal Culverts was lower. I believe I can make a recommendation to award the project to Metal Culverts.
I'll move that recommendation.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Say nay. Passed 5-0.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could I just want to ask for clarification on that, the items by consent? I wasn't clear. There was a discussion about 4-0 or 5-0, but I would request, if there's no objection, that that vote be recorded as 5-0 because Mr. Raddick was necessarily absent.
Okay.
Without his microphone.
Just say aye. Yeah, aye. I was in my office.
You're just late voting.
I did not have my mic on.
Yeah. Appreciate that. That's you could switch them off, you know.
Okay. Item 11, Board of Supervisors, 11A, approval of proposal for drafting of an MOU regarding fallen heroes and their families to remain on county health insurance. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is something that came up in the legislature but did not move, and I think as law enforcement stands in the gap between our citizens in Woodbury County and emergencies, criminal activity, and natural disasters, they put their lives on the line. And sadly, some lose their lives, as we have witnessed in Woodbury County during the last years, and that's something we commemorate annually. I think that we can lead the way without legislative mandate, and we can do this on our own volition. And I think not only having a brother-in-law in the Austin PD about 2 miles from the last destination, but watching what our Woodbury County Sheriff's Office does on a daily basis and putting themselves and their lives on the line, that we can have language drafted that children would remain on the county insurance until the age of 26, as well as the surviving spouse. I think after would be deemed the ultimate sacrifice, I think that's the least that we can do. So in consulting with our Assistant County Attorney, Joshua Ridman, nothing is prohibitive from us doing so, and I asked our Human Resources Director, Melissa Thomas, to likewise vet this and reach out to our insurance carrier. And it seems that in consulting yet one more legal counsel on our collective bargaining attorney, that because this deals in an insurance-related matter, that it would require a change to the contract. Personally, I have no issue with that because I don't think it's something that the county would want to necessarily repeal in the future. And I think it gives even more solid longevity to it if it actually is in the contract. So there's no intent on opening up any other language, but I believe that the union in good faith will work with us on this, and as it recently did in a great spirit of cooperation with the training center, for which we're very appreciative. And so with that, I also have looked at Des Moines and their police department and the language that they have in their collective bargaining agreement, and it's pretty straightforward. It says the insurance coverage extended by the section terminates 30 days after the remarriage of the surviving spouse, and it shall not be extended to a surviving spouse. And it also stipulates that health, medical, and dental shall continue in effect at, in this case, county expense for their surviving spouse and dependents of any employee who dies as a result of personal injury sustained in a line of duty and who is a recipient of benefits under the Federal Public Safety Officers Benefit Act of 1976. What I'm asking for today is to give direction for the HR director, the county's bargaining attorney, to draft language of an MOU in cooperation or actually opening up contract language, and authorize a county representative, I'd like to volunteer, to work jointly with the HR director to find acceptable language to bring back for final board approval. So with that, that would be my motion for discussion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Taylor, second by Radig. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'm all for this. I got no problem with it. I would just say when you're tying anything to that federal language, just make sure you're real clear, because I serve on a national board called Badge of Honor, and all we do is help communities that have lost police officers that don't have the wherewithal to file the federal stuff to make sure they get their benefits, and it's a nightmare doing the federal paperwork. That's why we do it, because a lot of smaller departments don't have somebody that is in that. So I would just make sure, truthfully, I would say leave it more broad so that you don't have to tie in as much.
Here's a question. Would you be willing to work with me on this to double up on
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Because I'd appreciate it with your experience. So
I would be happy to. I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
Any public input?
Dave Drew, Sheriff, Woodbury County. I want to thank you, Jeremy, for, I usually don't get political on Facebook, but on that issue, it bothered me that the ball got dropped in Des Moines. I know Amanda Bunting. We had a ceremony here a few years ago at Roberts Stadium or Olson Field, and some money was donated to her family because they ran out of insurance, and their child has, I believe, diabetes, and so they were trying to raise money for a dog that would help notify if there was an issue with diabetes. So I know that Amanda has worked hard with others to try to get this legislation. For whatever reason, I'm not sure why it didn't go forward, because my understanding was both sides, Republican and Democrat, were for it. So I don't understand politics in Des Moines, nor do I want to, but I'm glad that the board here, I think, is in favor of moving forward to help this cause. And I know the association members are probably even more happy. When I swear new deputies in and I see all their young families, I worry about a lot of things, but one of them is I don't want their children to go without health insurance. So thanks for looking after us.
Thank you for raising awareness of the issue, and if there's a way to speak back to that family that they're having an effect in other counties, maybe they didn't have success in the legislature, but they are here, that'd be appreciated.
Thank you.
Mr. Taylor, how long would you anticipate until you come back with a draft?
I would think that we could get something done in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I don't see necessarily, based on discussions with the association. So.
Okay.
Mike Smoley, I'm the Vice President, Local 7177. I want to say thank you for looking out for us. It's a big help down the road if something does happen. So when you leave, you don't know if you're going home. And 26 years old and the spouse, that'll be a big help for everybody. We appreciate it.
It's a excellent gesture from the board to recognize law enforcement and that you're understanding our families because they're left with nothing if one of us is taken. We really appreciate it on behalf of the association, so thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 11B, approval of proposal for operational parameters for one county entity subject to DHS approval. Approval of memorandum of personnel transaction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is a follow-on to our proposal last week to petition DHS to stand alone. I believe that we have good standing. You should have received some counsel that described Woodbury County's position in petitioning DHS. So during this interim year, we need to plan should that petition be successful. And so plans are being prepared to ask for formal approval tonight and moving forward in a series of steps. So a few things just by way of background. Chairman DeWitt and myself met with our Woodbury County coordinator and our budget analyst to discuss a proposed budget of $3.313 million. That's the original target of what we would potentially be spending in Rolling Hills had we been accepted July 1st, 2018. The spending target's very responsible because we actually start living within our means. And this helps to have people understand that we would have, by necessity, had to have made those cuts in the previous region from which we are leaving anyway. So we are responsibly moving toward that spending target. We have asked for that budget to come back before the county board as they are crafting that. So we have some things to do, though, in the interim. That's to address a leader, staffing levels, contracts, budget proposals, and liaisons. So I'd like to propose the following. Chairman Rocky DeWitt and myself serve as liaisons to the department. We've been involved with Rolling Hills meetings and had an initially positive meeting with our current coordinator, Patty Erickson-Putman, to discuss staffing, and a subsequent good meeting with staff about what our recommendations as two of us would be, and that would be to have a current status quo for staffing. We think that no change, and change definitely for the better, comes without some consternation, and so this would give us some stability there. The second parameter would be, as I just said, current staffing levels be made in accordance with a status quo level to include Mia Key, JL Alternatives Coordinator, Tracy Yoakum, who had been picked up by Sioux County but worked Woodbury County geographically, and that Ms. Yoakum be authorized July 1st, 2018 as a Woodbury County employee with the same vacation and benefits level as if she had stayed a Woodbury County employee. And then that the current coordinator be appointed and offered the new position as department leader at a salary commensurate with responsibilities and recommendation I know is on the agenda by our HR director, subject to your approval. That the current coordinator, upon acceptance of such position, be directed to closely work with our budget analyst on coding and any subsequent transitions between HTE and Tyler and that whole issue. All the funding would act as it did pre-regionalization. Come back before this board for final approval, and so that recommendation would be put forward by our department leader. And then we look at alternative budget proposals, and that relates to the disposition of the crisis center, to school-based services, to other cost-saving recommendations. I know that there was a governance board meeting today by Sioux Rivers in which they were talking about the necessary cuts that has conveniently been left out in the discussions. Sioux Rivers is doing this as well and has to by necessity. And that provider contracts be met with, updated, and providers have a clear understanding going forward with their funding positions for FY19 after the board approves the budget. and that subject to approval by Rolling Hills member counties, staff work closely with Rolling Hills and their CEO and staff to provide information to begin preparing an FY20 budget. As you know, that starts in January of 2019. Rolling Hills, during their last meeting, said that by October of 2018, that non-core services would need to make application. And so that's some kind of process by where they will begin to learn what we do over and above our core services. And so those are kind of some high-level overviews today, and I'll ask for several different motions accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I do want to, go ahead. We had a meeting a few hours ago there at Sioux Rivers. In the budget discussions that would be sent on April 1st as a 3-county region, NPI, Goodwill, and Midstep would all receive a 56% budget cut.
Mm-hmm.
The Crisis and Stabilization Center would be a 50% budget cut from $1 million down to $500,000. And they would likely cut 23-hour surveillance at the Crisis Center, which kind of negates a major stepping stool of the Crisis and Stabilization Center. So I think a lot of the desperately needed services are being cut dramatically. And then instead they're like adding things like telehealth services that weren't there before.
And in response to that, an excellent meeting with Unity Point today, as well as some of the major players in mental health, and hearing the full story, which you don't hear in the Sioux Rivers cuts that are being made, specifically by some who don't want to see this because there's some funding jeopardy based on the integrity of mental health funds. That's the full story, and after an hour and a half, they were very appreciative of having that full story. So I plan to present that so that we can have a factual, truthful discussion about what's happening. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Supervisor Raddick.
So what motion you want first? Or is there any other questions?
Mr. Potabom, I just have a question on the personnel part.
Mm-hmm.
So Patty Erickson-Putman and Teresa Yoakum, who are now Sioux Rivers employees? Is that correct?
Teresa Yoakum is a Sioux County employee by the approval for salary and benefits, but would be transitioning to becoming a Woodbury County employee.
Okay.
And you're right, Patty is a Woodbury County employee for that same purpose, but ultimately is paid for from Sioux Rivers funds. Both of them are paid for.
Well, my question actually, because I happen to know Mrs. Yoakum, her husband's a friend of mine, but I'm just curious what happens, or do we have any idea what happens a year from now? Do they have to go through applying at Rolling Hills?
Yeah, so one of the preconditions for Rolling Hills was that they would make all staffing levels recommendations. So I would assume that they would be looking at what an appropriate staffing level is, opening up those positions, taking a look at who currently is there and how that fits, and so that'll be a decision that's wholly made there.
But if we do this 1 year on our own, those would be the only 2 employees?
No, all of the employees would be status quo essentially.
Okay.
The only reason that these two, and it's a great question, Supervisor Potabom, the only reason these two appear on here today is because Teresa Yoakum, by fiat of this board, was a Sioux County employee for the time. Ms. Erickson-Putman's salary is adjusted here based on the fact that she is no longer going to be a coordinator, but will essentially be the department leader. And my understanding is our HR director relied upon looking at comparable CEO pay within the populations that are served. So those are the reasons.
So the other employees out in that building out on Triview would still stay as Woodbury County employees?
Right, okay. Right.
Because I always thought too, I was going to say, they're going to be busy.
Right. And with that, if we want to take up the first motion, and that would be on the coordinator pay. I looked at the HR recommendation and appreciate it very much. It appears to me that there were approximately 8 different salaries that were factored into that metric, and that they were averaged, and they're anywhere from Northwest Iowa Care Connection up to the most populous being Southwest Iowa MHDS. And with that, I'm appreciative of that data-driven decision. My recommendation in looking at that is to discount the lower populations that are 78,000 and under. I think that the county rural offices and below start to be disparate in terms of leadership. So I'm going to move the average of the top 5 in population, which would be $90,176.42, subject to the 2 3/4 bump that everyone will be receiving. So that would be my first motion.
I will second that. Motion by Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
I agree with the general sentiment and the change. However, I think it's cleaner for the board to go with the HR director's recommendation. And so I would move to amend the motion to set the salary at $87,337.50.
Ask for a second.
I'm waiting. Do we have a second on that?
No, I'm thinking about it.
I will second that. Motion by Young, the amended motion. And run that number by me again, please.
It's on the agenda. It's the recommended salary.
So now that the motion, and this is a parliamentary question for our resident expert, so now that that motion is amended, if that motion fails, a new motion could be made subsequently?
No, once that motion fails, then you're back on the original motion, if it would fail.
Okay. So my position hasn't changed in the last 18 seconds. So if the motion fails, I'll make a subsequent one.
Well, you don't have to. The amendment.
We'll be on the, I'll advocate for the original one.
Well, advocate for it now, because we're discussing it.
So my advocacy hasn't changed either in the last 28 seconds, and that's that I'm taking the top 5, what I believe are like counties in population, and averaging them, whereas I know we have 3 counties with populations of 74 to 78,000 that were averaged in.
What difference are we talking here? That's you said 90,000, so you're talking a $3,000 difference.
1,176, roughly. And
It'd be about 5, roughly, because one would be subject to the 9176 would be subject to the 2 3/4.
What will the final amount be then?
92.6, give or take $5, I think it was.
Because just apples to apples purposes, the motion on the agenda backup is with the 2.75. That's,
I believe so.
Yeah. So just apples to apples.
Okay, so one thing to bring up here. What's the official title is more department head, not CEO of a region. And this was compared to CEOs of regions.
Melissa Thomas, HR Director. We did go back and look at different job descriptions for each one of the positions in the region and decided that the new lead of the CEO of this region as compared to, for example, Shane is the CEO of those 3.
Sure.
So and that's why we went and did the comparables with the CEOs.
And just for the good of the viewing public, the current Sioux Rivers region CEO salary is $89,000.
That's correct.
However, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I have been before and I probably will be again, above that, he is able to make other pay from other various duties in his position within the county, is that correct?
That's correct.
So if he's running veteran affairs or others, he's able to amass that in addition to this salary.
That is correct.
I think that's helpful to note. Just for me anyway, so.
On the amended motion, would anybody like a roll call vote? I would like a roll call vote, please.
Okay. I guess, I mean, for me, I don't know, it's like I'm conflicted on this because I'd love to take the recommendation here. Now, I guess one thing that kind of has me up in the air on this is that, well, this position is essentially a one-year position because we don't know.
That's correct.
Well, and she's definitely not going to be the CEO of the new region. They already have one. So, I mean, there'd likely be, a subsequent pay drop in the new region if hired for that position. So what was the dollar amount with the percent? Or
92,656.
92,656.
And if you just look up population-wise, and you go from 74 to 78,000 to 96,000, we're 102,776, and that puts us, I think, right above where we would be at with, between Rolling Hills and Heart of Iowa currently. And again, I assume that they're subject to some sort of bump as well. I think it's going to be a challenging and very important position during this year, and I think we should recognize that, and that's my thing.
Sir.
Ask for a clarification of Mr. Ung's recommendation of $87,337.50 to compare apples to apples. Is that the 2.75 will be added on top of that?
No, the agenda item notes that is with the 2.75.
That is with the 2.75.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
all right.
These are both with the two. Yeah.
All right. I got it.
Well, both numbers now have the 2.75.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I guess myself, normally like to be pretty tight with money, but I do kind of agree there would be some challenges to running a single year region and something to navigate with that might not be considered in a comparable wage study situation. So normally I'd love to take your recommendation, but I kind of see the other side of this argument here as well.
I understand.
Mr. Gill, remind me if this motion fails, we do not go back to the original motion?
No, you're on the original motion.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Melissa or other discussion? So we may move on with the vote.
Could you restate the motion at this point so everybody understands what they're voting?
The motion to vote on the amended motion at
the recommendation of the HR director.
Recommendation of the HR director at $87,337.50, as is stated in the backup material. And you made the motion, I seconded that.
Yes.
Okay.
Call the roll.
Please.
Radig?
No.
Potabom?
No.
Taylor?
No.
Ung?
Aye.
DeWitt?
No.
Well, seeing as we're back on the original motion, I'd ask for the vote to be had.
Well,
is that
Rocky and I are both somewhat hesitant. Is there a middle ground, or?
I don't have middle ground.
Okay.
Was that a motion?
The motion.
So we're just voting on Jeremy's original motion now, I guess.
We're going to have.
You're on the original motion. That was Jeremy's, Mr. Taylor, Supervisor Taylor's motion, and that is for $92,656.
And did I second that as well?
Yes, you did.
Any further comments or before I would like a roll call vote on this one, Mr. Gill.
Radig?
Aye.
Audubon?
Aye.
Taylor?
Aye.
Ung?
Aye.
DeWitt?
Aye.
My next motion, Mr. Chair, would be to approve Ms. Yocum, effective July 1st, 2018, at the salary requested as recommended by the...
We have to change the whole personnel memorandum for next week, since Patty's salary is going to be changing.
No.
Is that different? Okay.
No, you just changed it. You can ask...
Oh, okay.
The Assistant County Attorney can weigh in on this, but at this point, they just amended that, and it's okay to approve it at the...
Yeah, what you should do is you should create a new form that has the updated amount and then get signatures on that.
Okay.
But they've already approved that, so it won't come back to the board.
Okay, thank you.
So my motion is to approve Ms. Yocum at the job title Social Worker 2 at the salary requested of $64,126.40, effective July 1st, 2018.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Potabom. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
And the final motion relates to proposals related to the management of the one-year interim period, designating Rocky DeWitt and myself to serve as liaisons to the department, to include status quo funding for staff levels, and to ask for the provisions that are listed here, including a budget that will be submitted to the Board of Supervisors, subject to approval, and direction given to the Social Services Department be made.
I'll second it. Projected levy, are we going to be at the 30? What are we going to be at?
So we'll still be, and Dennis, please correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, we'll still be at the 3049 that we are currently.
Correct.
But I have, and again, this is just a recommendation of the two of us, asked for a targeted spending level of $3,313,000, which is about $1 million reduced from current spending levels.
And that's so we can take that million over to...
Exactly, and thereby reduce the levy in the future year at a time when our tax levy is the lowest.
Motion by Taylor and second by Radig, if I didn't say that already.
What is that actual levy, not the per capita? You know?
The 34, about 3 million, 100 and some thousand.
So like...
So we are going to have to use some of our distribution of around 200,000 to supplement to make the balance out.
Right. But like I'm saying, the actual, like, what the taxpayer is going to pay on their property, what's that levy? Do you have that number?
It's right around 3,100,000.
So...
I think he's saying per thousand of valuation, aren't you?
Oh, per thousand?
Yeah.
That don't have right here. No.
Okay.
It'd be on our budget forms.
Was it like 20 grand equals a penny or something?
It's like 28 cents or something per thousand. It'll stay the same as we published. It won't change.
Okay.
We good? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. We are at 11C. Approval of proposal for funding of the Ag Expo Center with an upfront cost and a cost-sharing agreement on interest between Woodbury County and the City of Sioux City.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. City Budget Director Donna Forker, working with Dennis, has been putting together the financials for the Ag Expo Center, and we're a key participant in this. We had agreed to participate at $150,000 for 10 years, discussing financing. Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, but the city has put together a financial package that through their financing is preferable to have the $1.5 million up front. I think this board took very good steps in protecting itself from operational losses and management risk. Borrowing this money with a low debt service is within good stewardship of the money. We are leveraging nearly $14 million on a $72 million investment through essentially a sales tax div. And so the attached schedule gives a 4% and a 3% interest schedule. The financial impact would be $123,750 over a period of 10 years, about $12,375 annually from local option sales tax, gaming revenue, or other non-property tax sources. And so that's the crux of the matter. So those are opening comments. And what I'm proposing to do is to split the interest with the city and to do a 50-50 split. Dennis?
The 50-50 split, we'll have to discuss that with the city if they're willing to do it. I don't know if anybody's talking to council people yet or not, or if they're willing to do it.
I've talked to the mayor. Huh? I've talked to the mayor.
Were they willing? Okay.
Yeah, but I think he and I both recognize I'm one person, he's one person.
Right.
So who has the answer on why the city wants the money up front instead of over 10 years?
The bank that they've talked to, and they'll go through the bidding process just like we do for loan. They say more cash up front gives them better chances of getting a loan from a bank because this is a different situation where it's not guaranteed with taxes. It's guaranteed with revenues coming from donations over a period of years, also through events. Because they got to cover their debt service plus their operating costs. So the more they have up front, the better odds they have of getting a loan. And they will come through the county for a loan through the $10 million a year we have each year. Only they'll split in 2 years so they don't use up all $10 million. And all we are is a pass-through to get them the special rates or tax exempt. So the more they have up front, the better chance our local bank can bid on it. But they need startup costs for construction because you're going to have to pay the construction costs within probably a year and a half because they want to get started in May or June this year. So with donations spread out over the time period, they need this money up front, a lot of it. If you pay over a time period, it isn't going to come in for 10 years. So they need the money up front, and I can see why they need it.
Was this a request from the city to anyone on the board or yourself?
This was a request we had at a meeting that I relayed back to now the board. I had talked to Jeremy a little bit about it because he's been involved with the Ag Expo Center. He was on that committee, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm. I think we designated that as liaison.
We'll designate him, and this is what we come back with. The additional cost would be $123,000 if we split it with the city for interest spread over 10 years.
$123,000 is if we split it.
If we split it. If it isn't, you double it.
So instead of giving them the 1.5 million, we're giving them 1.6.
1.623 up to 1.7 something if they don't split it.
Well, I like the idea a lot better that we're doing $150,000 a year for 10 years and not borrowing any money to do it.
Where are they at on getting this project funded with donations and all? I mean, are they?
They have all the donations they need. They met their goals.
Pledges.
Pledges. Pledges, yeah. And I don't know how binding those are, but you assume
that's
they're binding. But it all depends too. And they got the money from the state grant. I think that's $13.5 million for the whole project. This is just more than one project.
Yeah, that's
3 projects.
like 4 or 5 things in.
So it's kind of vital. You can't let one fall down and expect the other 2 to go because the state's going to come back and have questions. Because the 13.5, I think, was based on the whole 3 projects together.
Yep.
It was.
So it is kind of imperative that, you know, if they need up front, unfortunately, that's the way it is.
Dennis, how is it brought up to you by the city? Was it like, oh my goodness, we forgot to say that we really needed this money up front, or was it, this is a nice thing that?
It was actually brought up when we had a meeting over there about 3 weeks ago with the Finance Department, Parks and Recreation. Marty Doherty was there, and then we called the bank that we do business with to come over and give their thoughts on this whole process, how difficult it could be if they don't have the money up front, help reduce the borrowing they'd have to do through a bank. And this was what was kind of, they told me to come back with us to the board. I came back to Jeremy, so Jeremy put it in a, agenda format to bring to all of you.
I think another way of looking at it is instead of paying $150,000 over the 10 years time, we're paying $162,000 over that time. And I think with a seismic transformational, I mean that, with Virginia Square and the Ag Expo Center.
What was the dollar difference?
123.
A year?
No, 12,000.
12,000 a year.
Yeah.
It'll be
so instead of 150, we're at 162.
So you're going to make that up in the sales tax revenue.
Yeah.
So the interest will be higher at the beginning and lower at the end. So the first year will probably be about 20, you divide 45,000 by 2. Then every year it drops by about $2,025 every year as the principal keeps going down. But that's what Jeremy is saying is an average.
I mean, every person that comes to town spends on average like $140 or something like that, and the kind of clientele for this are going to spend probably more. I mean, you look at the sales tax revenue we're going to get, I think it's a no-brainer.
So with that, I'd move to approve the offer to the City of Sioux City to fully fund $1.5 million with a proposal to 50-50 split the subsequent interest in order to move forward the project.
Second.
What if they don't split it? Is your motion contingent upon that, or is it regardless?
If they don't split it, then we don't offer the $1.5 million.
Okay.
I mean, I think we're literally meeting them halfway.
Well said.
I personally like the fact that we kept ourselves out of the operating, that we weren't going to have anything there, but I also like the fact that we weren't going to be paying interest on our money. But
yeah, the operational Woodbury County has zero obligation. It's going to be the City of Sioux City 1/3, and then the other entities are involved are going to be the other 2/3. We are out of that period, and that was set forth right at the beginning by the board.
Motion by Taylor, second by Radig for the record. Any further discussion?
Let's put the fun in some funding. Huh?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Nay. Passes 4-0. DeWitt, I voted against.
So you're a 1.
4-1. Yes, 4-1.
You're abstaining.
Man, tired of talking about money. Okay. Item 11D, authorization to spend $780.
Speaking of more money.
Gaming revenue for a full-page ad in the KSC
So
magazine.
one of the many, many things that is going on with the Centennial that has grown to have a life of its own, but I think is going to be very exciting, is that KSCJ has stepped forward and they're going to create a special edition magazine wholly dedicated to the Centennial and to Alfonso Iannelli and William Steele and everything that went into this magnificent building. I was asked by a representative from KSCJ if the county would be interested in participating. Our budget right now is sitting at a little over $1,000 in the hole for the Centennial. Full disclosure, we do anticipate that there will be nearly $10,000 in sales for the banquet, so I'll admit that up front. But I think that we have enough money in gaming. It would be nice to take out a full-page ad, given that this is a county-dedicated magazine. Looking at that, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks, that was kind of a Keith Raddick joke, that we could get 65 30-second commercials with this for that full-page sponsorship. And I thought, well, what better thing than to advertise the Centennial at the same time? So that would be a great thing. And I was asked if we want to put the Board of Supervisors on that ad, and I thought, I think it's better, given this time of season, that we highlight county services and all the good work that people do, or advertise the centennial itself and the day's listing of events. So however that plays itself out, if they don't have that in there, then we could purchase a space for it. If they do, then we can promote county services and the great work everybody does.
Sorry, so what was the idea for the radio commercials?
I think to advertise the centennial, I can't call it lunch and learn, the presentations that are going on in the courthouse, or maybe one could be about the banquet, or the museum display and different events along the way. And Dennis has volunteered to voice those.
I thought you said Chairman DeWitt was going to voice Levi Woodbury.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Just one correction on the deficit we're in a little bit, and the revenue will come in. We had 3,500.
Oh, that's right.
We added on our spot 4,500 in the hole. But that shouldn't be scaring anybody, because we still got ticket sales, coin sales, pillow sales, painting sales.
How many pillows is that, Dennis?
We have a bake sale too, or?
Pillows are minor. The artist prints and the
Dennis will be running around
The
with
money
a
will-
labor and stuff and everything.
Karen, do you have your pillow with you?
But we do have money in the gaming revenue to fund this.
I move to authorize spending $780 out of gaming revenue for a full-page ad in KSCJ Magazine.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Taylor. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. This one really passed 5-0. Reports on committee meetings.
I guess pending our actions today, Dennis, do you want to call up Shane and tell him that we're submitting our own budget and not to do the 3-county one?
Well, I think they still got to do 2 and 3, because we don't have 100% guarantee what's going to happen yet.
Okay.
And they adopted both of them, I think, at the meeting, 2 and 3. Their preference is 2. They've made that very clear up there today. So it's just after April 13th, that's when we'll know something. That's what they said up there. They're really waiting for the 13th of April with a meeting. Is that correct?
Okay.
That's publicly stated up there.
I'm understanding that the DHS director will be here sometime in the next 2.5 to 3 weeks, just for the appraisal of the board. I have asked if Chairman DeWitt and I may attend, otherwise they'll have a quorum, because it clearly states the 20AD that a quorum is 3 directors of the governance board, or 2 out of the 3 counties being represented, both of which would be the case if it was 1 and 1 and 1. So the other thing that I just wanted to apprise everyone of is, to my knowledge right now, Senate Study Bill 3204, authorizing Plymouth and Sioux to stand alone, has not made its way through the Senate. I heard another rumor that Republican legislators had rebuffed my request, again, which is untrue. I had asked that if Plymouth and Sioux were addressed in code, that Woodbury be amended and be addressed as well, because if Sioux and Plymouth are seen as a continuation of the Sioux Rivers region, they're going to lay claim, I think very inappropriately and irresponsibly, to the crisis center that they don't have the funds to manage, and which would be relying upon Woodbury County. So for that reason, I don't believe Senate Study Bill 3204 is going to make its way into law currently, but we'll have to see. We are moving forward on the exemption process, and we'll see where we go from there.
Any other reports on committee meetings? Do we have any other citizen concerns? Any board concerns? We are adjourned.